Welcome to Bloombox Growing Deeper. I'm Sarah.
I'm Hannah, and we're on a mission to help you become the gardener you want to be.
Hello, gardeners.
Yay! We're in garden season.
We are in real garden season, and we are back together in the office recording.
For the first time in months.
Yeah, and in like a really organized fashion. We have notes.
Oh my gosh, notes. We haven't had notes since last year.
No. I feel competent today.
I know.
Which is good, because we're going to go back to the science.
Yay! We love science.
Yes.
So this is going to be good.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I did put together these notes today, so we're still not quite there, but you know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You have the facts for us to reference.
Yes.
And we know the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of not having to edit out all the blank spaces when we Googled stuff.
Right. Before we get started, we have like 4 holidays to acknowledge.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, first of all, happy Father's Day. Yesterday was Father's Day. That's when we were recording this. So to all you fathers and father figures.
Oh, yeah, we're recording this on the 19th.
Right. And so then the 19th, happy Juneteenth.
Yes.
To everyone. So if you don't know the origins of Juneteenth, we encourage you to look it up. There's a post on our Facebook talking about it. So you can go, and Instagram. So you can go to that and look it up. So happy Juneteenth to everyone. We do not get the day off.
No, we get it off later.
Yeah. So we are here. Happy Pride. It's Pride Month. And then 4th of July.
Yeah.
Independence Day is.
We're not gonna release
we'll be
again
out before this. This will be out before 4th of July.
And yeah. And then we'll have another episode after the 4th of July.
Yep. So celebrate responsibly, everyone.
Yes. Don't start wildfires.
Don't start wildfires, and we want to see you come with all the same fingers and toes and eyes and ears and everything.
And it's always hot on the 4th of July. So while you're out setting off fireworks, water your garden.
Mm-hmm. And yourself.
And yourself. And just everything. Water everything.
And you know Sarah and I's biggest thing, sunscreen.
Yes. All the sunscreen. We're going to go to our parade, and it fits really well with our topic today, actually.
All right. Let's get into it
I'll
then.
save my comment about 4th of July parades for the appropriate time.
I hate 4th of July. It's my least favorite holiday.
Oh. I love it because I love anything that involves fireworks and parades.
Oh my gosh, we are the opposite. I hate it because of fireworks and parades. But okay, sure.
It's fine. It's good to be opposites.
So what are we talking about today, Sarah?
Heat. So much heat. But
it's so hot.
Specifically, how heat affects plants and how plants affect heat.
Yes, because it is a dance.
It is.
It works together.
It goes back and forth constantly.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be a lot of definitions in this episode. We're going for the science, and that means some multiple syllable words.
That's right. So we will give definitions throughout, but they will be in the show notes. Yes.
And I don't know how many of you pay attention to show notes. I don't check the analytics on that really at all. There's like the little show notes you get in your podcast app. And there's the big show notes that you have to click on the link to go to our blog.
Right.
I'm going to put all the definitions in the little show notes, so you don't even have to go to the full explanation, because you may end up wanting to refer to some of them.
And if it's been a while since you checked out the show notes, we did change the format. So
yes,
click on them again. Hopefully you enjoy it.
The link still takes you to WordPress. But it's not going to for very much longer because we have an intern now. Her name is also Sarah.
We love interns.
We do. They're great. And she is so good. She has been transferring all of our show notes into our website-based blog, which doesn't have all the weird ads that WordPress has been showing you, because they're a little odd.
They are.
We want them to go away. So there is probably... Maybe by the time this episode comes out, actually, that link will take you to a different blog.
Well, let's just tell Sarah that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's a little cleaner looking, a little easier to follow.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, plants and air temperature. So, number one, my first question was, are plants affected by air temperature?
And I think you probably knew the answer was yes, but you were wondering how.
It's yes, but.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, and how. So the short answer, like we said, is yes. But really the major influence here is water and humidity, as with most things. So there was a good article from the University of Missouri Extension, and they quoted agronomist Bill Wiebold, who put it like this: "It is difficult to separate the effects of high heat from the effects of water stress. Often these two separate effects, Often these two stresses occur together and magnify the effects from each other."
And this is why you see a range in conditions for each plant. So, say we have a plant that can take almost full shade to full sun, and then it says it can take dry to really wet. Well, put the opposites together. If it is in a lot of shade, it can be pretty dry. But once you put it in a lot of sun, that plant wants to be wetter. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Right. And so does it matter what the heat index is?
I would say yes, because the heat index is heavily influenced by the humidity.
Right. But the wind chill usually doesn't matter.
Wind chill doesn't, no.
Right. So that's something to keep in mind. We want to know actual temperature, but also heat index. But the wind chill, not so much. In the winter, if you're trying to figure out if the cold is going to affect your plants, it's actual air temperature that is the most important.
And it's actually the soil temperature, which is caused by the air temperature, not so much the wind chill. The wind chill is more like what it feels like on your skin.
But if you'd like to go out and probe the soil in negative 30 degrees,
you won't get it in very far.
Exactly. That's going to be part of the problem. But right now, since it's summer and it's hot, we are mostly talking about how heat affects plants.
So, and this is where we get some weather science, we get some physics, and we get some plant science. So this is going to get really fun.
Yay.
So the heat index has a lot more factors than just the air temperature. And one of the things that comes into play with that is the humidity level. And that's what matters a lot to the plants.
Right. And we're not even, and I don't know, does the heat index include UV index?
I think it ends up including some of that, and
because today
cloud cover.
Right. Because today, for instance, in Lincoln, UV index is 10, which is extreme.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Which means people can get burned more easily.
Right.
That UV is high. And I'm assuming that affects heat index as well.
I think so.
At least a bit.
That's one of the things we didn't put on our definitions
list.
I'll write it down.
There's a lot of things to keep in mind.
Okay, I'll add that in. So you're not going to get a definitive answer right now, but let's pause here, and I think before we say the next part, we need a couple definitions.
Okay.
So plants, while they're photosynthesizing, so while they're taking the energy from the sun and turning it into energy to fuel their growth.
Via sugar.
Yep. There's side processes. So they transpire or they sweat. And this is where, we all hear the examples in class, in school, about how plants breathe in CO2 and they breathe out oxygen.
Right.
Well, they also use oxygen, but when they breathe out CO2, they are also breathing out some humidity.
Right. Some vapor.
Yeah. Same as you when you get hot. You sweat.
And when we breathe.
When we breathe.
We don't breathe out pure CO2.
Right. If you remember wearing a mask and fogging up your glasses, that's why you fogged up your glasses. So, but that's also what cools the plant, because they breathe out that water. It sits on their leaves and it evaporates off their leaves. And evaporation is what makes us feel cool. That's why we sweat. When you sweat and your sweat evaporates, you feel cool, even if you aren't actually any cooler.
Well, it does make the surface temperature cooler.
Right.
Right. So that's the big part, is that the leaf surface temperature needs to be cooler.
Now, that's why humidity comes into play, because there's a balancing act there, where to an extent, the higher the humidity, the less water the plant loses through transpiration.
Right.
So the less water stress it's going to show. But then at a certain point, when the humidity gets too high, the air can't take any more water.
Right.
No more water can evaporate. And so it slows down the evaporation off of the plant.
It's why humans also feel hotter with higher humidity, because our sweat isn't as effective.
Right. And so that's when you get the stomata, like the stomata there.
Yeah, there's another word.
So the stomata are the pores on the plant leaves, like the sweat and the breathing pores.
And if you've looked at it like a microscopic image, they're like little mouths.
They do kind of look like little
lips
mouths.
And everything.
They do, because they can close and open them.
Right.
So if the plant is feeling excessive water stress and is hot, it will still close those stomata to hold in the water, but now it's limiting the photosynthesis that can take place and the cooling that can take place because it's halted processes.
Yes. So you might be familiar with these processes, even if you're not, even if this is the first information you've heard, because you might have heard, especially if you're in southeast Nebraska, about the corn sweats.
Yep.
And for those of you not here, you're probably like, corn sweats? Excuse me.
Is that like when you ate too much corn and you get the corn sweats?
Like
no.
meat sweats. No, it's not.
This is why if you live in a rural area and you like to go running on a gravel road, it feels really good to run in between the cornfields right before dusk. Because it's really cool in there. And then you're going to get back out into town and you're going to go, ugh.
Right. But the amount of corn and soybeans in southeast Nebraska does affect the overall temperature and humidity of the area, which I think is amazing.
It's really neat. It shows in really clear evidence how the next half of this episode is going to come into play.
Yes. So we won't get into that yet, but let's talk about what plants actually do to lower their temperatures, right? So I said it before, but we'll get back into it. Leaf temperature is the most important.
Right.
That's leaf surface temperature, not necessarily the air temperature, right? Or like plants don't feel temperature.
Yeah,
I guess.
They're not cognitive. They're not sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I'm hot.
Beings.
That's what I was trying
Yes.
Yeah, they're not sitting there saying, please turn the air conditioner on, but they do react.
Right. So while some sunlight energy is used for photosynthesis, it's such a minute amount. So the rest of that energy gets converted into heat, which is the same that happens everywhere on Earth, right? Anytime the sun's hitting, there's energy in heat. So that's happening to plants too, and it causes the leaf temperature to rise. So like we said, then the plants have to sweat, right?
Well, let's start with the easy option, is if the air is already cooler than the plant.
Yes.
That's easy.
Okay. What happens then?
Conduction.
Conduction. There we go. So that's another good definition for you. So conduction occurs when the warmer leaf returns energy to the air if the air temperature is lower than the leaf temp, which, remember, can happen even on hot days because the surface temperature of the leaf can be even hotter, just like the surface temperature of the sidewalk is hotter than the air temperature.
Right.
Happens with plants too.
Sometimes it happens early in the morning or later in the evening if the plant has retained some heat and is finally able to let it go while the air temperature is already starting to cool off.
Right. So that warmer leaf sends that energy back into the air and it lowers the temperature of the leaf. So now convection. What's convection?
Now we have the cooler air temperature coming back in next to the leaf, which in return is cooling the surface. So it's a circle. Think of arrows in a circle over the top of a leaf. This is a topic that definitely would benefit from a nice whiteboard drawing.
I know. This is not a visual medium podcasting.
This is not visual. So we're going to visualize it. You've got a circle. You've got kind of an airflow happening.
Just Google it. There's many a diagram.
Yes.
Maybe we'll add a diagram.
I can add a diagram.
We'll have to pick and choose which one we like most.
There's so many.
Miss Frizzle.
I'm going to make sure.
Miss Frizzle would know how to do it.
First for one from Miss Frizzle.
That's what we're going to do first. We're just going to link to the Netflix on plants.
Yeah.
The Magic School Bus episode.
They actually have a great photosynthesis episode. I used it to teach a study to a group of freshmen when I was in college.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
There
to
you
lead
go.
a refresher.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. That freshmen don't know what photosynthesis is. I remember that. Okay, moving along. So this is why plants need more water on hot days, right? Mm-hmm. I think we all, like, that's something that we all know. Oh, when it's hotter, plants need more water. They wilt, all those things. But I don't think we're thinking about exactly why it is. It's not that they're, like, drinking more. I don't know, you know?
But they are.
They are. But it's the same reason why humans need more water on hot days, because we're sweating more, right?
Yeah. It's like if you are working outside for like 6 hours and you realize you haven't had to go to the bathroom the whole time because you've been sweating that hard and you're like, oh, I better go get the water jug. Mm-hmm. It's not like this is required information for gardening. That's why this is Bloom Box Growing Deeper. You don't technically need to know this to care for a plant, but it's really neat to know it.
Mm-hmm. I find it fun.
I do too.
Right? So if water resources are not available, then the leaf can't effectively cool itself. So that's why we water more, but that's also why droughts and heat in combination can cause a lot of problems.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And why, we had a bad drought this spring. We're still technically coming out of it.
Are we coming out of it?
Well, we are where I live. You might not be.
Yeah,
we're starting to get some solid 1-inch rains.
All right, good.
But
I think we had 2 tenths.
That is not sufficient. Anyway, we were in some ways lucky that when that drought began occurring, we did have a reasonably cool spring for quite a while, which definitely affected some of the things that managed to survive. Because if we had been hit with, 90-degree temperatures in April and that drought, which we can get that hot in April.
Yeah, it happens.
It's not impossible, but we didn't. And we even stayed reasonably cool. We had some cool nights through May.
Yeah, right.
If that hadn't happened, that drought would have hit even harder than it already did.
Yeah, these are really the first hot days we're seeing here in mid-June.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, we've been blessed.
We're pretty satisfied with that. Let's see. Go.
Okay, so then next, though, is humidity. Because like we said, especially in southeast Nebraska, humidity is something that we have to take into account because it gets so hot. I am going to Little Rock next week. I don't know if you've ever been there in the summer. The humidity is like unreal. So how does that affect how our plants are cooling, right? Because if it's all water that is allowing plants to cool itself, then if the air already is holding all that water, can it use all of these evaporative tasks?
Not as effectively.
Right.
And this is why we get foliar diseases. It's not the only reason, but it's a big part of it. If you look at the things that we are growing in eastern Nebraska versus western Nebraska, and I'm just going to pick petunias because I have a very solid example that if you see pictures of Chrissy Land's petunias in Scotts Bluff, it will strike envy in the heart of every southeast Nebraska gardener because they grow great here, but they grow even better there because the lower humidity.
It's dry.
And so those plants that grow really thick, especially like some of our annuals or some of our overpacked perennial gardens with not natives, we're going to get into why natives have a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
We start to get like plants that are attempting to transpire when the air is already pretty saturated. And now we just have water sitting on leaf surfaces.
Yeah. I mean, which is also why we recommend not overwatering, like overhead watering.
And this is where you can say, my plant is wilting. It's 90 degrees. I better water it. And you turn the sprinkler on and tomorrow it's dead. because it was already attempting to cool itself by transpiration, and you added even more water to those leaves that couldn't evaporate.
Right.
So this is the time of year when ground watering the
Put
ground
it on
surface.
the soil. You're actually watering soil, not the plant.
Yes. You're watering the soil's watering the plant. That's a great way to put it.
Perfect. Okay, but this isn't the only way that plants have to cool themselves or to cause some things to happen, right? Plants will also change their actual structures in reaction to heat. So I think some of the best examples, I mean, we all know sunflowers, right? They change to face. Yep. And we see it with flowers a lot. Like my Cali Roe is at night it closes, right?
Morning glories.
Morning glories, yes. But the leaves can actually change as well. What kind of changes do we typically see?
So leaves can curl and they can twist and they can roll. So we have the changes we don't see, which is the stomata opening and closing. But then they're trying to limit their surface area. So you see leaves roll up on themselves. And again, a first instinct can be, oh no, my plant's dying.
Right.
But it's a protection. The more surface area you have exposed to the sun, it's the same as you. Plants don't have a sunscreen, so they just try to cover what they do have. They roll up, and corn does this a lot.
Yes, yeah, you can see the structural change in corn. So yeah, curling, rolling, trying to change the position of the leaves so that they're not flat with the sun shining right on them. They'll try to be more parallel to that sunlight.
Yeah, you might see a plant that's branches are very flat and open be a little more vertical.
Yep. You can even see leaves flip so that the lighter underside is exposed instead of the darker, because we all know light reflects light, right? That classic elementary school lesson. Okay. Any other things you want to talk about with how plants change? So
one thing we're not going to go too deep into today, because it's almost a whole nother episode and we have another half of this topic that we want to talk about, is we've been acting like all plants photosynthesize in the same way.
Oh, yeah.
They don't.
No. We're talking about mostly Nebraska-ish plants, right? If we try to get into crazy plants.
Well, no. Actually, there's a variety here. So
that's true.
There's three main differences, and they call them really obscure things like C3, C4, and CAM photosynthesis. And what it's actually like really complicated on one end, but really simple on another. And it is the plants adjusting to that humidity problem. Okay. So that's the visible difference is those leaves that are able to transpire really effectively and the leaves that curl. That's like a visible difference. CAM plants are the most different. What they do is they store up energy during the day, and then they photosynthesize in the evening and at night using that energy when they are freer to transpire.
Like a battery.
Kind of, yeah. Because at night the air temperature drops and the humidity level hopefully drops, leaving them freer to transpire. So we did not get into that. And that's okay, I think.
That's too much.
That's too much. I think we did just fine for today.
Okay. All right. So then one of the things to remember that we haven't really talked about is that plants will, of course, be affected by long-term weather and heat changes that we're probably going to see due to climate change. And so the main thing that we're worried about there, because these are kind of two separate issues, right? Like we have the day-to-day temperatures that we have to worry about and the changes there. But then the long-term changes that we're going to see, which are affecting like whole growing seasons and extremes, while that is going to affect the day-to-day life of the plant, what we'll see there is changes in reproduction times and just how the timelines work with everything else. Yeah. So that's kind of a separate topic to think about.
It's worth
at another time.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth mentioning. And extremes will of course be concerning as well, because plants need time to adapt, right? And so they're used to like, oh, now things are heating up, so we'll change processes, just like we see with deciduous trees in our area of the country, right? They're changing with the light, length of day, the temperatures and all of that, and they have evolved over many, many years to be able to do that. So when that changes quickly and dramatically,
it's tougher.
It's tougher for them to respond. Yeah. But plants can also be part of the solution to these changing climates. So that's what we are going to talk about next.
Yes. And so plants are really very adaptable to short-term changes. But we've all seen the threshold. If you've ever grown bell peppers, they grow best when it's really hot. And so if we have a long, drawn-out, rainy, cool spring, there will be a point at which you just will barely get any peppers. There's a point
at
which
tomatoes. You get blossom end rot.
Yeah. So there's a point at which they just get a slow start, but they still produce. And there's a point where they can't come back from. And that's a big reason that we promote native plants so much, is because they're more, their threshold is longer for those changes to affect them.
Right.
But what we really want to talk about the second half of this episode is plants helping us with climate change.
Right. Well, helping everyone.
Yeah,
right.
You're right. But I'm selfish.
We don't need to be anthropocentric.
I just want to be cool.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
No, they affect a lot of the environment around them.
So let's just start with shading real quick, because I think that's one that everyone knows. We had Father's Day dinner yesterday, and my dad brought up, he's very good, I feel like, at thinking ahead on things.
Right.
And one thing he talked about is in their neighborhood, they had a bunch of ash trees all along some streets, and it was city trees, so the city came and removed them all together at one time, all those that couldn't be treated. And he said, watch it, next year at the same time, we will see air conditioning people coming through, right? HVAC people. And that's exactly what happened, because once they removed all the trees, no more shade, heat went up, your old air conditioner couldn't handle it, or you realized the air conditioner just wasn't made to handle that size of a house with that heat, right? And so shading is super important.
Right. I mean, you have a lot of these older neighborhoods that are losing their ash have maintained pretty good temperature control, which is window air units and things. And some have not even gone to central air because their neighborhoods have been so well shaded. That's a big expense when you lose that.
So shade is really important, and we're seeing, I think we all kind of just know, on a hot day, you find a spot under a tree, right, to get that shade. But shade isn't the only thing that can help lower air temperature, especially in our urban communities, because with really tall buildings and limited space, we have to think creatively and broader than just every corner needs a tree, which I do think every corner needs a tree.
I do think every corner needs a tree. Let's stop on shade for a minute, though, and talk about why, like all the different ways. Because shade is not that simple. Like, first off, there's just removing the sun from you, right?
Sure.
Like, your body's hot from the sun. You step into a tree. Now your surface area immediately cools. But it's also preventing things from getting hot in the first place. So concrete holds so much residual heat long into the evening, sometimes never even gets the chance to fully cool down. Right.
You can feel it, right? After it cools down and you step on warm concrete and it's still radiating that heat.
Yes. And it's why my raised bed garden behind a concrete retaining wall, I can keep plants alive over the winter that should not grow here over the winter, because the concrete retains so much summer or sun heat even in the winter. So
yeah, and for all you sports players out there or sports parents, that artificial turf is like a whole nother level of retaining heat. I was in marching band, and being out on Memorial Field here at the university, there's zero shade, of course, and you're just in a microwave with all the glass and everything, and then that field has black tire grounds in it. It's just
soaking
heat
it
is
up.
crazy. Yeah.
And playground equipment.
Yeah.
This is one of my biggest pet peeves because I am now a mom. It already made me mad when I was a kid. And now I'm a mom, and I have to sit there in the heat and watch my kid play, who's never going to want to go home, even if he's super hot because we're at the playground.
Those metal slides.
Even the plastic stuff. It's hot. It's so hot. I mean, it's burn you hot.
And now they start putting that black, like, cushy stuff underneath it. That's even hotter.
It's even hotter. And on top of that, we have cities arguing about why they can't possibly put a tree anywhere near the playground.
No.
Which is
Too dangerous.
just ridiculous. And if you want people in your parks, you're going to have to work on that.
I'm not sure they do.
Maybe you found the real reason they don't want to plant trees in the parks. Because we wouldn't actually want anybody there.
That's a whole nother story.
It is. And I recognize I have sat in meetings with city planners and been to conferences with them, and I understand that we have a tension between the fact that trees are a growing thing and the fact that we need them. But I do get a little frustrated with this thought that we can just not have them.
Right.
And that's kind of not an option.
Especially in my research with this, I found an article kind of I think it was an EPA article talking about how trees help lower urban heat island effect, which we're going to get into, but also what we are, like, why people aren't planting trees, especially communities.
Okay.
And one of those is the annual cost of trees.
Yeah.
And you look at it, an annual cost of trees is, they said, between $14 to $30 per year per tree, and that most of that is in pruning, structural pruning, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about sick trees that we're treating. We're not talking about tree removal.
The maintenance and growth of a healthy tree.
That doesn't seem like a lot to me.
It doesn't seem like a lot
I know
to you until you think
put it
about
over
thousands.
all the trees.
Yeah.
Sure. But what are we spending on roads?
Well, we all
like,
know the shade. Well, we don't all know, but we all know here in our office that shading concrete and asphalt increases its life by up to 10 years. So, yeah, and that's one of the points I made. I think that our colleague Chrissy and I are going to be presenting to the Nebraska Planning and Zoning Association this next year on seeing trees as infrastructure over every city budget department, because that's where the budget crunch comes from. Because most people are still considering them parks and rec, maybe roads.
Well, and they're seen as a value add, not a value necessary.
And not an infrastructure. And our point that we made in a comment session last year that we're going to develop into a full presentation is that if you want to recognize trees as infrastructure and have everybody follow suit, then you need to spread it across your infrastructure budget, not your value added budget, which is like sometimes your parks and rec, sometimes your city greening committee, whatever little prettying the town is kind of how they are viewing it in their budget. And it's going to take a mindset shift.
Yes. Yeah. So, let's talk about that. Okay, so I think we've covered shade. So let's get into all the types of plants and how they help lower temperatures. So this is where we get a new word. Again, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Evapotranspiration.
Yeah. That's like two words together.
It's 2 words together, but I like it. And it is the process by which water is transferred from the land to the atmosphere by evaporation from the soil and other surfaces, and by transpiration from plants. So it's kind of describing 2 processes happening at the same time and the effects that it has on temperature.
It's like we talked about transpiration from plants being like sweating, and evaporation and how it makes us feel cooler. It cools surface areas. And it's like putting those 2 things together.
Yes.
Because one option is that we hose down our concrete. And we've all done that. There's a reason why sitting next to the splash pad is more fun than sitting across the parking lot from it. And, we do it on our patio. If we forgot to pull our shades down, we'll just hose it down real quick and in about 5 minutes, it's now comfortable. We pull the shades down to prevent it from heating up in the first place.
Right.
But if we forget to do that, you can hose it down quick. The evaporation cools it off. But we had to do that.
Right.
We can let the plants do that.
So evapotranspiration alone can lower temperatures by 2 to 9 degrees. Partner that with the shade, which can reduce temperatures up to 20 degrees. Now we're looking at 25 to 30 degree difference.
Yeah.
And that is huge.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't happen from one tree.
No.
That's the problem, that I see. We can't take a whole city downtown. We have so many of our small towns were just built concreted because concrete was cheap at the time.
And easy to work with.
With. It's predictable. We know what it's going to do.
And it was modern. I think
Yes,
that's the thing to remember. Is This was like the height of showing that you made it, right?
Yeah. Now, if we take one corner of that and plant one tree per block down 3 city blocks, are we going to do much? We might make 6 parking spots that people now fight over. We might cause some alley fights over shaded parking spots. But if we could plant all the way down each of those blocks, we can actually change the microclimate of that little town.
And then along with that comes increased economic value, not just in the money you're saving from the shading and the cooling, but people want to spend time down there.
Right.
So if there are businesses, they're going to go there. Right.
This is where my 4th of July parade comes in. I stopped myself earlier.
Okay, tell us about your 4th of July parade.
I mean, it's just parades in general. This is where you experience the real problems with having a non-shaded downtown. We actually always have our parade is for county fair.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, your county fair is around the 4th of July?
No, it's in August.
Oh.
Our parade is actually, our parade doesn't happen on the 4th of July. It happens on county fair.
I see.
August.
Is even hotter.
Have you been to Wahoo?
I have.
We have no trees downtown.
Yes.
Down the whole parade route.
Oh, good gracious.
You can sort of fight it out over like the east or west side of the building because they do the parade at 6 o'clock at night. So if you can get there early enough, we've let the concrete heat up all day long.
What?
All you can do is sit there and pray the fire truck comes and hits you in the face.
Who is in charge of this parade?
So we have to bring umbrellas to the parade.
I think you should start a petition.
Move the parade to 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But I have been to the Waverly 4th of July parade down shaded streets.
Yeah.
Do you know how pleasant that is? It's the 4th of July. I didn't even want to get hit by a water balloon because I was perfectly comfortable.
Yeah, our neighborhood does a 4th of July parade. Gotta be honest, haven't ever been to it. It's mostly for kids.
Yeah.
I don't have kids.
We do like the kiddie
it's
bike
like
thing.
9 a.m. I'm still asleep. I have 4th of July off, baby. I'm not awake to be at that. But it is all shaded and quite pleasant. I have known the route. So, yeah. I mean, I think you guys are just doing it wrong there.
I think so, too.
Don't know.
And I'm looking at this. We got... I'm just like throwing trash at specific towns, which isn't fair because they're all the same, guys.
Yeah.
There's very few that are different. And to add another, the parade route runs east to west. So the sun right down the parade route.
Down it. Yeah.
We have a kiddie bike parade on the 4th of July. And we now have a child who's riding a bike and would be thrilled to be in it. It's at noon. So
rough.
there will be zero shade. None. Not a drop.
No.
And I don't know if we want to do this.
Does he get to decorate it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do it. I grew up decorating my bike for the 4th of July, but I don't want to walk him down a parade route when it's 96 degrees down a concrete road.
Ours also includes a pet decorating contest in their parade.
And you still don't get up for this?
Still don't get
what
up.
What does it take?
Usually Matthew has a gig the night before that goes till like 2 a.m.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I am truly asleep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is where before recording I told you this topic always makes me think of that song Summer in the City. Because all those problems could be solved by some trees.
Trees, people, trees.
And not just trees. I think you wrote in here that we've got other options.
Yes, so let's talk about those other options. One that I had not considered until I was reading that EPA article is the effects of vines.
Yes, especially when we have limited planting space and really tall buildings.
Yeah, and I think you look at pictures of communities, cities, sorry everyone, not in the U.S.
Yeah.
that are, I mean, I think some of them were in developing countries that had the benefit of learning, right? And I'm thinking specifically of like Singapore, right? Like the amount of green they include in those buildings and these giant metropolis, right?
Yeah.
To help keep things in good shape is unlike anything we've ever seen here in the U.S. But it could be done.
It could. The reality is, especially in the Midwest, where we're dealing with a lot of smaller communities that weren't planned this way at all, and we're dealing with cities that grew faster or in ways they weren't expecting, that it will always be easier to use this green infrastructure solution from the beginning than it will be to retrofit.
Right.
So we do have to recognize that the challenges of retrofitting a town or a city are real, but we are arguing that they very, very much pay off.
And that they shouldn't be considered an extra.
Yeah, that they should be considered a part of the built environment. Same with green roofs. That one gets a little challenging because you have to have the structure of the building in place to do it.
You can't just plop a green roof on any roof.
No, they weigh a lot.
They weigh a lot. They have requirements for sure. I think it's one of the interesting things to see every time the landscape design folks, the students put out their posters.
Yes.
And gosh, you gotta love them. But sometimes you have to say, like, how will that ever work on that roof?
They dream real big, but I'm not sure they've taken physics yet.
They'll get there. This is an intro class.
It's very much, and I love that they do that intro class before they learn some of the realities, because it's good to get some of those dreams out. Because
get them out. You'll never have them again.
No, because many parts of them can be thought out, especially when we do have the opportunity to put in new buildings.
Right. Exactly. So both of those vines and those green roofs can help lower, they can do all kinds of things. I mean, these are important in communities, not just because they will lower temperatures, they will also reduce air pollution, help reflect some of the light back out, right? All of these good things. But overall, increasing vegetated area space, green space, will help improve our community's temperature.
Yeah.
Because if we're taking out that concrete, that cement and asphalt where possible, and replacing it with green spaces, even, you won't hear us say this very often, even if it's just lawn, is going to improve.
Is cooler than concrete. And this is where you have cities or towns, communities, that the opportunity for a tree just isn't there yet. I've been trying really hard to just get this idea out there that even if we're not at the point of a tree yet, let's just not pour the concrete. Throw some perennial grasses in there, throw some flowers in there. At least we don't have concrete and we do have green material. And that green material can do a lot of work.
Right. Some of those perennial grasses, she really means that you can just throw them in.
She watches
they will
me.
do it.
I carry around them by their tops and toss them around the garden. But every piece of plant material, even if it's not a big tree, is contributing to being cooler than concrete. We do this. Our patio is kind of different. It's actually like a carport off the side of our garage. It was meant for parking in, and we reclaimed it as a place to eat outside.
Yeah.
But it does get hot. It faces west, and if I'm not there to pull the shades down, the concrete gets hot. We don't have the money to take up all that concrete, but one thing we have done is bought a bunch of big pots, and I go buy these $20 palm trees and things and bigger flowering plants and try to fill the space with as much greenery as I can.
Yep.
And I often water it when I want to be out there sitting so that all that evaporation is actively happening.
I can bring my sledgehammer over. We can make this happen if you want.
It does need to happen someday, but not yet.
I did it in the basement recently.
Oh,
so
was that
I can
for
do it.
your anger management.
It was
sounds
so
lovely.
good for my anger management, not so good for my shoulder. But
No.
man, yeah, going down there and just banging the floor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it.
I've often thought that would make me feel very good, but probably make my back very angry.
Yeah. And honestly, my dad did most of it. It felt really good. And then all of a sudden you realize how long it's going to take.
And then it doesn't feel good.
But it does depend on the type of concrete and everything.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
Anyways, I'll help whenever you're ready.
Okay.
So how can green infrastructure, which we generally tend to say is like plants and trees planted strategically with the built infrastructure in mind, how can those lower air temperature and address climate change? Do we have any others than what we've already said?
I always kind of start with the first thing we're doing is keeping the sun off the concrete to start with. The second thing we're doing is the evapotranspiration, that we're actively cooling the surface area of the plants and the buildings around it. And then the third one is more perceptive but real, is that we're lucky in the Midwest that the air pollution in our towns is not quite at a perceptible level. You mostly notice it when you leave.
Right. Although with wildfires recently in Canada, the whole U.S. has seen really bad air quality.
Noticed. And having those plants, some do it better than others, some do it more effectively than others. And this is where it does take quantity of plants, but they do pull that pollution out of the air. And it does make it easier for us to breathe and feel cool on a hot day.
Exactly. All right. We covered a lot with air temperature and plants and trees and all the things.
Yeah.
Hopefully it helps you understand kind of what's going on in your plants and what they need and also why we need it as well.
And we know many of you are already advocates for having green around us, but we hope we gave you some language to share that need with others. That
Absolutely.
Plants, we're really, really quickly approaching the time when plants can't be optional.
Right.
I think we are. But I think we're approaching the time when cities need to recognize that we do great work in our neighborhoods and our personal property, but we need our cities to recognize that plants can't be optional in our cities.
Sarah 2024. That's our campaign stance.
Nope. Nope.
We're launching it today. Congratulations.
Gee, thanks.
All right. What are we? The Nebraska Statewide Arboretum Party.
Yeah.
We're just going to
just take over.
Yeah, there we go.
Every realm of politics. We don't even care which office.
No.
Just give us one.
And we're just putting plants in all of them.
Yep. We'll do nothing else.
That's right. We are a one-issue party. Plants everywhere.
Oh, well, speaking of plants everywhere, what is blooming in your garden right now?
Same answer as last time. What isn't blooming in my garden right now? The one that I love noticing every so often is my spiderwort. Yeah. Because it blooms just here and there. Yep. And you see a little pop of pinkish purple in back amongst my ferns. And I just go, oh, there it is.
There it is.
Yay. Yay. So that's one I'm excited about right now.
And it's such a hot purple. Like, it's
it's
not
like vibrant.
Yeah. My New Jersey tea is blooming.
Oh, is it?
I planted it last year. This is a plant I've been jealously waiting for my chance to plant. And it's blooming. It's still tiny, but it's covered in flowers, and I love it. I know it's going to very quickly be one of my favorite plants.
Oh, awesome. I love it.
And I think I've got some liatris going to pop here.
Yeah, mine is getting there, right? I also have Heliopsis blooming right now. It's looking great. It's doing good stuff.
We did some just actual sunflowers this year on the outside of our fence behind my big blue stem.
Oh, wow.
And they are just set the tiniest of buds. So I know we have months to go before they are actually blooming, but I can't wait. They're already following the sun.
There you go.
Their twisty thing.
Oh, I love it. Are you going to be able to harvest the seeds?
Well, we think we're going to actually scatter them. We want it to...
Oh, seed itself.
Yeah. So maybe in a year or two we'll collect them for ourselves, but we mostly want them for the birds.
Sure. I like it.
Yeah. How about insects?
What insects am I seeing?
Yeah.
I have seen some tiger swallowtails,
Yep, we have 2.
which is always good. No monarchs yet, although I've seen caterpillars. So there had to have been them around.
Have 1 monarch that's been around.
Okay.
And we had the painted ladies earlier this year. We've got this blue butterfly that I haven't got the book out to identify it yet. It's usually propping up one of our microphones, but it's not today.
Matthew got stung by a wasp yesterday. So we've seen one of those.
Nick's been chasing them.
This was weird. This is a story, but I'll tell it. We are getting an egress window in our basement, finally. And so that meant we had to remove a rhododendron bush. Okay. It's a very nice bush. But so I wanted to keep it, but there was nowhere in my yard that I could fit it. Yeah. So I said, well, take it over to my dad's. He's always willing, and he's so good at nursing plants because this thing is going to need nursed.
Yeah. Transplanting in the middle of June.
And we gave it to him with the whole, like, it might not work. Yeah. And he's okay with that, but he's going to try. Anyways, so we took it over to his house, and then it was hot, right? So we decided to go to Sonic and it's happy hour, get us a limeade. And in the drive-thru, a wasp came out of his pants. What? Stung him on the knee. And I was like, how long has it been in there? And we're so lucky.
Where'd you pick it up?
I don't know. And it caused some confusion in the drive-thru.
Confusion and delay, guys.
Yeah, but he's fine. Everything's good. But so I've seen wasps. Yeah.
Our frustration is the mud dauber ones. Like we let everything else alone, but those mud dauber ones are obsessed with our garage. And so Nick just chases them around with his hat, trying to scare them off without getting stung.
There you go.
It's fairly amusing for me. I don't think it is for him.
Right. Oh no.
Yeah, we have baby birds. In, of all things, our potted hibiscus tree.
Sure.
Like
in the tree or on the pot?
In the tree.
Okay.
I mean, it's
a big tree.
We have oak trees. We have a catalpa tree. We have crabapple trees and a beautiful maple tree. And they pick, of all things, this dinky little potted hibiscus I got from the hardware store. But there's 3 babies in there, and the mama loves when my soaker hose runs, she hops down it, and it must bring the worms up. For the moisture. Yeah. Because she just goes to town feeding those babies. And she's kind of getting tame because she built her nest on our patio.
She's used to you guys.
She's used to us. So we're trying to make sure the neighborhood cats stay away.
Right. I planted a tree 2 years ago, and it's still small enough that it had the bamboo stake. I put it horizontal and use tape to kind of just stake things up until I can do the actual staking with a larger tree as it grows. I noticed the other day that a bird has made it a perch. He lands on it, and he's perfectly balanced so that it just
flips sideways?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
These cardinals have this thing figured out. I was like, okay, well, it's not doing anything for my tree anymore.
No, that's not really a helpful stake, but let the bird have it for a while.
Let him have it. I'll restake it later.
Okay, well, this was a really fun episode. It's fun to get back to some of the science.
Yes, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. Since it is gardening season, send in your questions, comments, whatever you want to send us, and we'll address them on the podcast. We love to do that. Even better if it is a voice memo or a voice message so that we can play it. And don't forget to rate and review us. We would love to have that done as well, and share us with people. Yeah. Tell people about it. Put it on your social media. I don't know, print off the thing and mail it to someone. Whatever you want to do.
We've seen weirder things,
We have, yes. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Bloombox and Bloombox Growing Deeper are both programs of the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum.